Revenge Office Stories. My boss promoted my lazy, useless colleague over me. I felt betrayed and broken. But little did they know, I was already setting a trap that wouldn't just expose the office fraud, but would grant me the sweetest revenge. It all started on a Tuesday, always the worst day for a corporate ambush. The air in the office was thick with that uniquely stale smell of lukewarm coffee, overworked printers, and the faint, desperate scent of yesterday's microwaved popcorn. For 5 years I had breathed that air. I was 26, and this marketing agency was the only real job I'd ever known. I'd started as an intern, fetching coffee and taking notes with an almost religious fervor, convinced that if I just worked hard enough, if I was dedicated enough, my worth would become undeniable. And for 5 years, I poured everything I had into that belief. I was the first one in and the last one out. My name was on every successful campaign, my fingerprints on every award the company had won in the last 3 years. I wasn't just a good employee. I was the engine room of the marketing department. While others took their full hour for lunch, I ate a sad, squash sandwich at my desk, my eyes glued to analytics reports. While they left at 5 p.m. on the dot, I stayed late, refining presentations and brainstorming new angles for clients who didn't even know my name. I lived and breathed this job. My social life had withered away. My hobbies were collecting dust in a corner of my mind labeled for later, and my diet was mostly caffeine and adrenaline. I did it all with a smile, fueled by the promise of the senior marketing manager position that was opening up. It was more than a promotion. It was the validation I had sacrificed so much for. Everyone knew it was mine. My boss, Mr. Davison, had all but promised it to me. "Just keep this up, Sarah," he'd say. "Your dedication doesn't go unnoticed." That's why when the email landed in my inbox calling for a mandatory department meeting, I felt a jolt of triumphant excitement. This was it. I smoothed down my blouse, took a deep breath, and walked into the conference room with a heart full of hope. And then there was Kevin. Kevin was my professional nemesis, though he was blissfully unaware of it. To him, I was probably just that quiet girl who's always stressed. Kevin was the human embodiment of a long lunch break. He was a master of the corporate disappearing act, a virtuoso of delegation, and a connoisseur of taking credit. He'd been with the company for 3 years, 2 less than me, and in that time I couldn't point to a single significant thing he had completed on his own. His workday was a carefully orchestrated performance of looking busy. He'd wander the office with a single piece of paper, his brow furrowed to look like he was deep in thought. He'd join conversations, nod sagely, and repeat the last smart thing someone else said as if it were his own profound insight. His main skill was schmoozing. He knew the name of Mr. Davison's golf buddy and the favorite football team of every executive on the 4th floor. While I was buried in spreadsheets, Kevin was building relationships, which mostly meant laughing too loudly at bad jokes in the hallway. His laziness was legendary, but it was a clever, slippery kind of lazy. He wouldn't just not do his work, he'd pawn it off. "Hey, Sarah," he'd say, leaning on my desk with that infuriatingly charming grin. "I'm swamped with the Henderson account, a blatant lie since I was leading it. Could you just give these numbers a quick once-over? You're so much better at the details." That quick once-over would always turn into me redoing his entire report from scratch because it was riddled with errors. I'd stay late, fueled by a bitter mix of resentment and a pathological need to prevent shoddy work from going out with our company's name on it. And the next morning, Kevin would present my work as his own, earning a hearty "Attaboy, Kevin" from Davison. The most infuriating part was his arrogance. He genuinely believed he was a genius. He saw his ability to manipulate others into doing his job, not as a character flaw, but as a sign of superior management potential. He'd say things like, "It's not about working hard, it's about working smart," and then spend the next 2 hours scrolling through his phone. He was smug, condescending, and treated me like his unofficial, unpaid assistant. Of course I complained. At first, I was subtle. I'd send emails CCing Mr. Davison, that clearly outlined who was supposed to do what. But Kevin was a master of excuses. His computer crashed. He was waiting on a client call. He thought I was handling it. And Mr. Davison, a man who valued smooth talk over solid results, bought every single one. To him, Kevin was a charismatic go-getter, and I was just the quiet, reliable workhorse in the background. This was the man I was up against. My long hours were often spent cleaning up his messes. My stress was a direct product of his incompetence. And yet, I held on to the belief that merit would prevail. That actual, tangible results had to mean something. They just had to. I sat in that conference room, my leg bouncing nervously, and watched Mr. Davison clear his throat. "As you know," he began, beaming, "we've been looking to fill the senior marketing manager role. It's a pivotal position, and the decision was not an easy one." His eyes met mine for a fleeting second. I offered a small, hopeful smile. He smiled back before his gaze shifted to the seat beside me. "This person has shown incredible initiative, a real knack for leadership, and a forward-thinking attitude. They are a natural leader who knows how to motivate a team." Every word felt like it was written for me. Initiative. I redesigned our social media reporting system in my spare time. Leadership. I mentored 3 interns who all got full-time jobs. "So, without further ado," Davison boomed, "please join me in congratulating our new senior marketing manager, Kevin." The air left my lungs. For a moment, I was sure I'd misheard. It was like a cruel joke. I saw Kevin's face break into a triumphant, smug grin as he stood to shake Davison's hand. The room erupted in polite applause that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. I clapped. I have no idea why. It was a purely autonomic response. My hands felt like they belonged to someone else, my face frozen in a grin that must have looked utterly insane. I could feel the pitying glances from my few work friends, the ones who knew. Kevin gave a nauseating speech about teamwork and synergy and even had the gall to look at me and say, "And I have to give a special shout-out to Sarah. I couldn't have done it without her support." It was a public execution. He wasn't just taking the promotion. He was rubbing my face in it, framing my hard work as a stepping stone. The room was spinning. Betrayal is too small a word for it. It was a clear message. Your work doesn't matter. Your sacrifices don't matter. All that matters is who plays the game better. The walk back to my desk was the longest journey of my life. I sat down in my chair, the same one where I'd spent countless nights and weekends, and stared blankly at my computer screen. My reflection looked back at me, a pale, hollow-eyed ghost. The rest of the day was a blur of forced smiles and muttered congratulations to Kevin. He was now officially my boss. The lazy, incompetent fraud I had carried for 3 years was now in a position to approve my vacation days. The irony felt like acid in my throat. That night I fell apart. The dam of professionalism I had built for years finally broke. I sobbed, an ugly cry that left me breathless. It wasn't just disappointment, it was a profound sense of injustice that shook me to my core. I felt completely worthless. Davison's words replayed in my head. Incredible initiative, knack for leadership. It was a script describing me, but he'd cast Kevin in the leading role. This wasn't just a missed opportunity, it felt personal. And it turns out this feeling is incredibly common. There's a ton of research showing that women often get lower potential ratings despite having higher performance reviews. A man's charm is seen as leadership potential, while a woman's quiet competence is seen as support. It was a bitter, textbook case of gender bias, and I was its latest victim. The days that followed were a special kind of hell. I dragged myself into work each morning, feeling a crushing weight of dread. My motivation evaporated. Why bother putting in the extra effort when it was so clearly unappreciated? My passion was gone, replaced by a hollow, cynical ache. And that's what unfairness does, right? It doesn't just demotivate one person, it poisons the morale of the whole team and kills productivity. My mental health took a nosedive. I had trouble sleeping, lost my appetite, and felt a constant, low-level hum of anger. This is the psychological fallout of being passed over. It's not just a career setback, it's an erosion of your self-worth that can lead to long-term stress and anxiety. Kevin, in his new role, was even more insufferable. Power went straight to his head, and he became the worst kind of micromanager, a classic sign of an insecure boss who knows they're out of their depth. He questioned my every move and scheduled pointless meetings just to hear himself talk. The final straw came about 2 weeks later. We had a major client presentation for a project I had almost single-handedly managed for 6 months. Kevin, who had contributed nothing, insisted on leading it himself. He stood in front of the clients, confidently clicking through the slides I had created, reading the speaker notes I had written. And then he stumbled. A client asked a direct, technical question about the data. It wasn't complicated, but it required an actual understanding of the project. Kevin froze. He stammered, "That's a great question. The synergy of the data points to upward momentum." It was complete nonsense. The client, a sharp woman named Mrs. Gable, narrowed her eyes. The room went quiet. I had a choice. I could let him drown and expose himself as a fraud. It was so tempting, but my pride wouldn't let me. I cleared my throat softly. "If I may, Kevin? I believe Mrs. Gable is asking about the correlation between the spike in social media engagement in August and the subsequent 15% increase in online sales. The raw data shows a direct causal link." I spoke for 2 minutes, calmly laying out the data and strategy. Mrs. Gable nodded, impressed. "Thank you, Sarah," she said, making a point of using my name. "That's exactly what I needed to know." The meeting ended successfully. As everyone was packing up, Mr. Davison pulled me aside. "Good work in there, Sarah," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Great job supporting your new manager. That's what I call teamwork." He didn't get it. He saw it as me being a good little soldier, propping up my superior. He didn't see that I was the superior. I had just saved his new golden boy from utter humiliation, and my reward was a condescending pat on the head. That was the moment everything changed. The sadness and despair crystallized into something new, something hard and sharp, a quiet, burning rage. The betrayal wasn't a wound anymore. It was a weapon, and I was finally ready to use it. Before I tell you how I built the perfect trap that made them all pay, let me know in the comments if you've ever had to clean up a lazy coworker's mess. And while you're there, please like and subscribe so you don't miss the fallout. Trust me, you're going to want to see this. That night, I didn't cry. I sat at my kitchen table with a laptop and a dangerously calm sense of purpose. The fog of depression had lifted, replaced by the crystal-clear clarity of a woman with nothing left to lose. They had broken my spirit, but they had also unleashed a meticulous, overworked employee with an encyclopedic knowledge of the company's inner workings and a newfound taste for vengeance. My revenge wouldn't be petty. It would be strategic, professional, and devastating. I was going to use the very system that had betrayed me to exact my justice. The plan was simple. I was going to quit, but I was going to leave behind a parting gift, a Trojan horse disguised as a resignation. My weapon would be my own work ethic, twisted into an instrument of destruction. For the next 4 weeks, I became the model employee from hell. On the surface, I was more helpful than ever. I answered Kevin's idiotic questions with a patient smile and took on the extra tasks he delegated without a single complaint. I was biding my time. My revenge had 3 phases. Phase 1, the digital paper trail. I started documenting everything, meticulously. Every task Kevin passed to me, every mistake I had to fix, it all went into a private folder. I created a spreadsheet that would become my masterpiece. It had columns for task, assigned to, actually completed by, time spent correcting errors, and link to proof. Over a month, that spreadsheet grew into a damning indictment of Kevin's entire career. a monument to his laziness built from the bricks of my own unpaid overtime. Phase 2, the handover document of doom. This was the centerpiece of my plan. I created the most comprehensive, detailed handover document the world has ever seen, titled Project Continuity and Q4 Strategy Execution Plan. It was a 100-page work of art. It detailed every project, every client, every password, and every deadline. But woven into it was the trap. For every critical task, I included phrases like, as Kevin was briefed on during our sync on October 5th, or following Kevin's final sign-off on the budget. I hyperlinked every statement to the evidence I had collected. I was creating a labyrinth of accountability where every path led to a dead end where Kevin was supposed to have done something, but hadn't. The beauty was its deniability. It didn't say, Kevin is incompetent. It assumed he was. I was handing him the keys to the kingdom, but the instruction manual was in a language he couldn't read. Phase 3, the resignation letter. The final piece was the letter itself. Polite, professional, and utterly devastating. After the usual pleasantries, I crafted the final paragraph. The payload. It read, to ensure a seamless transition and to empower Kevin to hit the ground running, I have compiled an exhaustive handover document outlining all current projects and pending action items. I have saved it on the shared drive under the file name Project Continuity and Q4 Strategy Execution Plan. I am confident that with this guide, the team is in incredibly capable hands. My last day will be in 2 weeks. I had already found a new job, of course. A director-level position at a rival agency offering a 40% salary increase. I had accepted their offer the day after my epiphany. That knowledge was the fuel that kept my rage burning with a cool, steady flame. I resigned on a Friday at 4 p.m. I walked to Mr. Davison's office and placed the letter on his desk. He read it, a slight frown on his face. Sarah, you're resigning? This is unexpected. I've been offered a position I can't refuse, I said calmly. He scoffed. Well, I'm sorry to see you go, but leaving right after Kevin's promotion? It doesn't look good. I just stared at him, letting his arrogance hang in the air. He went back to the letter, his ego clearly soothed, probably thinking he was getting rid of a disgruntled employee. Then he reached the last paragraph. His smile faltered. He read it again, slowly. Project Continuity and Q4 Strategy Execution Plan. He murmured. He looked at me, confusion dawning. Is this a joke? No, sir, I replied sweetly. I take my responsibilities very seriously. Everything Kevin needs to know is in that document. His face went from smug to pale. The penny was dropping. He knew my work. He swiveled in his chair, opened the shared drive, and clicked on the file. I watched as his face went blank. He scrolled and scrolled. He started clicking the hyperlinks, his mouse moving frantically. Each click was another nail in Kevin's coffin. He was witnessing a live-action replay of me, carrying his new manager's dead weight. He looked up at me, his mouth slightly agape, pure panic in his eyes. Sarah, he whispered. I had no idea. I'm sure you didn't, I said, my politeness finally slipping. But I'm confident Kevin can handle it. After all, he has incredible initiative. You said so yourself. I turned and walked out, leaving him staring at the digital time bomb I had just armed. As I packed my desk, Kevin swaggered over. Heard you're flying the coop, he smirked. Couldn't handle the new management, huh? I just smiled. A real smile. Good luck, Kevin, I said. You're going to need it. My last 2 weeks were glorious. Mr. Davison was in a constant state of panic. He offered me a counteroffer, a raise, anything. I politely declined. The real fun began the Monday after I left. I got a text from my friend, Amy. OMG, it read. You are a legend. Davison called Kevin into his office with your Q4 plan printed out. It's a literal binder. Kevin looked sick, An hour later, he's having a full-blown meltdown. The Henderson client just called with a question from your doc, and Kevin told them he'd have to circle back. Davison is beet red. Stripped of his human shield, Kevin was utterly exposed. He missed critical deadlines, clearly outlined in the document. He was a captain who had been handed a state-of-the-art battleship and immediately crashed it into an iceberg he was told was there. On Friday, Mr. Davison called me, his voice frantic. "Sarah, please. You have to help us. Kevin's a disaster. We're about to lose the Henderson account. I'll pay you a consulting fee. Anything." I let him sweat. "I'm sorry, Mr. Davison," I said, dripping with false sympathy. "I'm on my way to my onboarding at my new job. I'm sure Kevin will figure it out. He's a strategic thinker." I hung up. 2 weeks later, Amy sent the final update. Kevin had been fired for gross incompetence. The Henderson account was lost, costing the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. And Mr. Davison? He was on thin ice, his own judgment under intense scrutiny. My document had become evidence of both Kevin's fraud and Davison's catastrophic failure of management. I sat at my new desk in my new corner office and I laughed. It wasn't a bitter laugh. It was the laugh of pure victory. True revenge isn't about causing chaos. It's about letting people's own actions lead to their inevitable downfall. I simply held up a mirror, and the reflection was so ugly they couldn't stand it. My story isn't just about revenge. It's about recognizing your own worth, especially when others refuse to. My experience taught me a hard lesson. Sometimes hard work isn't enough. You have to be your own advocate. You have to know your value and be willing to walk away from any situation that undermines it. For anyone out there feeling undervalued, unheard, or cleaning up someone else's mess, my advice is this: document everything. Build your case. Keep a record of your accomplishments, your contributions, and the times you've gone above and beyond. That documentation is your power. And most importantly, take care of your mental health. The emotional toll of a toxic workplace is real and damaging. Don't let a bad boss or a lazy colleague make you question your own abilities. Your value is not determined by their inability to see it. In the end, I didn't just get revenge. I got a better job, more money, and a renewed sense of confidence. They thought they could break me, but they only made me stronger. And that truly is the sweetest revenge of all.